Hello everybody and welcome to the Pretty Random Podcast. This actually isn't an episode number this week. This is a very special episode that I'm going to get to the reason why, but first of all I'll do an introduction. Hello Holly.
Hello.
I'm Mark and we have a very special guest this week. This is Craig number 2, Craig Martin. First time guest, long time listener. Hello.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Good.
Very good, yeah. Fun fact about you, Craig. You were the first person to ever listen to the Pretty Random Podcast.
What?
Yes.
Yep.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
We recorded the first day that we recorded on Sunday afternoon in the evening, or no, I think it was later on in the week. We were going to a wrestling show.
Sure.
And I'd edited it, and I brought it on my phone and put it on in the car. And
In
Craig,
the car, yeah.
Craig
We
was the
sat
first
through it.
person to
That's
listen to it.
incredible.
I was the litmus test for the
So
very
this is
first
like
one.
historic.
Well, this is
really.
historic as well, and also because it's been a long time coming, because you were due to come on the Halloween show on the first season.
Yep, and also for any of the wrestling ones. That
Yeah,
you
the
would have
wrestling ones as well.
and we keep saying it's going to happen, and it never happens. So
Yeah,
glad to be here.
So yeah, I remember that time when we did the first ever Halloween one. If anyone's listened to it, or if they're going back and listen to it, you'll hear me crazy ill croaking my way through it. And we kind of we were like, we need to get a ringer in, but like the stars didn't align. And like the whole time I was just like sipping Coors Light and honey in equal amount to try and get away
And
through
also,
it.
like in the infancy of the pod, there was a few times when we could all message in, and when you were live, and I was messaging you and I was listening to it, going, "No, say this, do that." And it was so good. And obviously, long-term listener, and glad to be on. But it's strange to be not on a numbered episode. So this is going to go down as a historical kind of
Definitely.
one-off number.
It's a special episode.
It's still going to sit in season 3, but I actually want it to sit. It's kind of one of our only ones that's
episode 0.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. It's the one that I hope that people can listen to at any point and have as much relevancy as anyone, because most of the time we're all pop culture and zeitgeists. But so a couple of weeks ago, Craig contacted me and asked me if we'd like to do a special episode, or at least have him on the show to talk about the upcoming February the 7th, or if you're listening to this in 2020, probably like February the 8th.
It was Thursday, the February the 7th. Put that in a time capsule.
Yeah, it was on this year. It's February the 7th. It's called Time to Talk Day. I'm just going to give you from the website. I'm just going to give you the introduction to Time to Talk Day, which is: too often people who experience a mental health problem are also expected to take the lead on talking about mental health in the wider sense. Time to Talk Day encourages everyone to talk about mental health. So I think that says a lot about it. It's a day to bring your problems to the table, almost to encourage people to talk to each other about the things that are going on in their head.
Absolutely.
We're in a good time at the moment where mental health is changing in the perspective of people, and people are starting to realise that the brain is just as important as your left bicep, or your heart, or anything, and every part of your body needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Definitely, absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, it's so crazy when you think like your body and your mind carries you through life. So the least you can do is take care of it, cherish it, nourish it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, the thing with mental health is that people think, when they think about having a mental health day, mental health sick day, mental health whatever, they're all thinking, well, my arm's not hanging off, I'm not crippled with flu, I don't have a real bad problem. It's easy to say that and to say just I can't physically face getting out of bed today. I can't go into work. I can't face that judgment. I literally stepping out of bed is one of the first things you need to do in the morning, and sometimes it's just so crippling and debilitating that you can't do that. So I think it's important for people to understand that mental health is just as important as any of your physical health. It's just as important as to look after yourself mentally as it is physically. And you can't get salad for your mind.
No, you can't.
You can look after yourself salad for your physical health, but you can't get salad for your mind.
I've never heard that before. That's I love
So,
that.
Get salad for,
Yeah, I mean it's probably a very sort of easy way to bring it down to something.
True,
but
though, yeah.
you need to do something for yourself to be able to make your mind better, and also you can't struggle on your own. Speaking to people is the main thing, the main resource you can possibly have. Sharing your plight with somebody else isn't burdening them. It's actually opening them up and bringing them into your life. If somebody had a sling and a broken arm on, you go up to them and say, hey, how are you doing? How's your recovery going?
Yeah.
You don't have a sling and a broken arm. What you have is a slightly broken mind.
Yeah.
But you can get there. You know, there's so many different resources, but it's harder when it's not outwardly visible. If you're walking along with your arm hanging off, they wouldn't expect you to go to work. But sometimes when everything's falling to pieces for you in your mind, you don't get that luxury.
No, I think as well, we're in a good age for mental health because, like you said, we don't have a salad for your mind, and that's true. Like, if you are like overweight, you exercise. You know, we have all these cures for physical ailments, but we're only just now sort of bringing to light sort of cures for mental ailments. And I think now is a good time for that, and it's also a good time to talk about it and think about it as well. And like,
Absolutely.
it's good to think about it in compassionate terms. It's a good time to think about it in terms of like science as well, because there is a science behind it. So I think really what today is about is just
opening up and just having
getting
that
out there.
conversation. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 1 in 4 people has a mental health problem in their lifetime, and I think in fairness, that's probably a very conservative low estimate. I think most people are struggling with something, whatever that may be. But I think the most important thing now is that people are starting to see that it is a serious issue. Society as a whole is forcing people into situations which they're not happy with, which is then increasing the anxiety, and people are saying that it's, people trying to say, oh, anxiety isn't a real thing. Anxiety is, just a product of your surroundings, of your environment. But why should life be like that? Yeah, people who struggle with depression and mental health issues and anxiety, there are many different things under the umbrella of it, and people just suddenly think, well, that guy's suffering with a mental health problem, like, let's take his shoelaces away, let's take away anything that's going to be dangerous. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, some people are just anxious just to talk to new people, to talk to people on the phone, to talk to, to go out of the house without makeup on. Some of those things, they seem trivial to other people, but when they're compounded with lots of other underlying issues, they do become important. And it's time now that everybody brings those issues to the fore. It's not just about hiding it. It's not about confiding in just your one close person. It's not about trying to hide it from your parents if you're younger, if anything's happening to you. Everybody just needs to bring that out now. At the end of the day, we've come a long way now, and there's 1 in 4 people who are struggling with some sort of problem. So we just need to get everybody up there, and we need to talk about it the same way that, I know it sounds weird, but in like an epidemic way, we need to talk about it like it was like AIDS in the 80s.
Yeah.
We need to talk about it. We need to bring that up, and everybody needs to say it's okay to do that. Like, nobody's mind is the same. No two minds are the same. Everybody's going to struggle with something, and we just need to everybody rise up and just say, right, that's it. Everybody just be happy with what you are, because by doing that, that's going to get rid of most of, not get rid of it, but it's going to help most of the mental health issues anyway, because people don't want to talk about it. Once they feel stigmatized, they move inwards. What they need to do is move outwards and talk to everybody, because it's not all about, oh, this person's going to want to truck themselves off a bridge, this person's not eaten for 3 days, this person, what this person is just someone who's going through life, but unfortunately they're just not going through life in the same way as everybody else. But then when they look at it from an open point of view, they actually are. Everyone's got their own issues, everyone's got their own struggles, but without talking about it, everybody struggles on their own, everybody goes into their own little lanes. And we need to all be together in our own, and talk to each other, like, make the most of life, because if you have a mental health issue, you can take your medicines, you can do whatever, you can have like the exercise and whatever, but the main thing that's going to happen is if you're alone, you're going to be doing all those things alone. If you're together with people and everybody understands, you bring your friends back into the fold, people that you've obviously pushed away because you've not been talking to them, you've been like sitting in your room for days. You bring those people back in and say, look, I'm sorry, I've been ill, I've not been myself. This is what it is. And all the things I've been ashamed to say to you for so long, I'm going to say now. And just get all of those people in your life and have a support net.
It almost feels like it needs to be some kind of like group intervention, but like an intervention for each other at the same time, where
Yeah.
Like
everyone.
a worldwide level.
For
Like,
the
yeah,
human
like a-
race, really.
an intervention for everyone, like a harvest for the world, but like
Yeah.
an intervention for the world.
Yeah. What you were saying there, something about that made me think that once the stigmas get stripped away and everyone understands that not everyone is equal and everyone has different struggles and everyone has different afflictions. Everyone looks different. Everyone acts different. If everyone was able to understand and appreciate that, then you strip away people's weapons, because a lot of the time, a lot of these mental health scars and damages are actually weapons of the mind of other people. Like people grow up through school thinking they're not good enough because they're told they're not good enough by their peers, sometimes by their teachers, sometimes by their family. Now we're not being unrealistic here. We're not saying that like the whole world can just like drink a Coke and smile.
Yeah, click
Yeah.
out. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, like the Skittles, not everyone can have a Skittles and taste the rainbow. But like if you can start to understand that if people can start to understand that the person that's swinging their mental sword at you is just as damaged as you are, and that's the reason why they're doing what they are, then like people can start to empathize with each other and start to understand where the levels that everyone's coming from, and then people can. I think coexisting is probably the thing that people don't understand. But then we're not put in a position via the mass media, mass culture, and well, we won't go into it because we agreed not to before the podcast. But capitalism, where everyone has to compete. Competition is fine, but like you're competing on a mental level. Who's better than the other person?
You feel like you're spending your life in a kind of like metaphorical shop window.
Yeah.
Where you have to change it and redress it every day for to be honest, for the impression of other people who actually in most days don't mean anything to you at all.
No.
But you feel like a mannequin. But as a metaphor for the mental health thing, as you end up speaking to people, as you end up taking on more support, more resources, it's like that bit in the middle of Forrest Gump where he runs and all of the things fall off, like on his legs, all of the shackles on his legs fall off. But the best part about that is like they're breaking off one by one in like a really huge symbolic way. And that's what it's like for you when you end up opening up to people, when you've gone quiet and not spoken for so long, and all of a sudden you bring those people into your life. It's like each one of those people is just ripping off one of those shackles, so you can then get back to your life as it used to be. You're not brought down. You're not burdened on by all of this. There's just this dark, the black dog they call it, don't they? And it's hard. It's really hard.
And I think what you were saying as well about like the weaponizing of mental health, like that is a big issue in this world right now. Is, I mean, like people doing horrible things because mental health is being neglected, like people being horrible people, and it's sort of like an X-Men thing where like you have to understand that everyone's different and nurture those differences, otherwise you get a Magneto and not a Professor X.
Well, but the trouble we have at the moment is that Magneto's in charge of the United States of America. so people have got license. People have got license to act and behave in the way that he does, which is, I mean, again, like you said, if you can understand where someone's coming from their point of mental health issues, you've got to probably reason and say that Donald Trump's not mentally well.
No, he's
absolutely.
completely not.
I think with him, it's more like the narcissism and of the mental health spectrum. I think there's obviously something there. The problem is as well is the guy is horrendously successful. I mean, everything that he does, and in fairness, if he came out and said he did have a mental health problem, and with the success that he had, he'd be a good vehicle for that. He'd be a good thing for change, to say that he was struggling with something. But I don't think it's that. I just think he's just
dick.
I mean, the thing was, I mean, if we wanted to go into politics, we'd have to have another 3-hour podcast. So I'll probably pull out on that. But just say screw the little orange what's it man.
Just the interesting thing about it is he's probably the most in the best place in the world at the moment to do the best amount of good in terms of the mental health stigma, because he would appeal to the type of people who won't talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who need the time to talk, who need to know how to talk, and they need to know about these things. And if he came out and said, probably wouldn't say it about himself, like you said, the narcissistic side of him, but if he said, This is America. We want to make it great again. One of the things we need to tackle is mental health, and here's a speech about mental health and its implications. The right people that need to listen will be listening, because the people who know about it don't listen to the guy and don't care. They might actually praise him for this, and
not only that, it would probably get them a little bit of lead to run on the whole guns thing as well. Like if they said they were going to address the mental health thing, I think that would probably give them a little bit of bandwidth to just to leave away from the guns for a little while.
Yeah.
I mean, those two things are not intrinsically linked. However, if you are someone who is predestined or has pre-existing mental health issues and are also given access to military-grade weaponry, I can't see any good coming out of that.
No.
But that's another thing for their constitution, and I think the mental health and guns combination is something that does need to be looked at.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one problem thing. Like, you know, to do some of these things, you have to have a very, very dark void in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be addressed with any mental health problem can be addressed. Even things that people are scared to talk about, like sociopathy and stuff like that, like those things can also be addressed, but it's still taboo. Like people are only just now want to touch things like anxiety and depression, and just those. It was still a good thing, but right now it's really just on the cusp.
Yeah, I mean, anxiety and depression, I mean, however you want to talk about them, a lot of people use them from a fashion tag point of view. People say, "Oh, I'm feeling so depressed today." It's like, no, you're not. It's like, you're feeling sad today.
That's
like,
really
I don't
annoying.
choose to feel depressed today. I wake up, the sun's shining, the birds are singing outside, and I still feel like shit.
Yeah.
And like, I've got an exam coming up. I'm so anxious.
You're nervous.
You're probably nervous.
Yeah. and by
It will
doing
go
that,
away.
again, it trivializes. It
Yeah.
trivializes the issue. It's like, oh, no, what's wrong with you? You depressed? And it's like, well, yeah, actually I am.
Yeah.
But the reason I feel pissed off today is because I got onto the bus and I had to sit next to you, and you've been yammering on to me about how depressed you are because this is you missed the bus before. It's like, you're not depressed. You've just been like, you've just had a minor sort of problem today.
Yeah.
You're not depressed. You've had a minor issue in your life. You've had, and the thing is, by saying that, then what you do then is you make, when I turn around and say, literally, I struggled to get out of bed this morning. Like, my alarm went off 3 times. I didn't want to open my eyes because I knew there was a mirror there. I didn't want to see myself in the mirror. I didn't want to get up, and I didn't want to bathe myself that day. I didn't want to get up and dress myself that day. Everything in my mind was telling me that something bad was going to happen that day, that I was going to get there. That over the weekend, someone's come in and done some work over the weekend, and they're going to hate me for it, or like that I've going to have done something wrong. You build all that. That's the issue. It's not just like, oh, I don't want to go to work, I'm so depressed.
Yeah, definitely.
I just quickly want to jump in because you've just reminded me, and it's not a segue. We love a segue on the Pretty Random podcast, but it's a very big link when it speaks to the voices in your head that you said, and a piece of advice that I heard the other day that involves Donald Trump. I read something the other day, a really interesting piece of advice that I could instantly dismiss as comedy, but the more I thought about it, the more reasonable it was, which is when you hear this voice in your head that's saying, you're looking in the mirror and you're saying you're ugly, and it's saying, or you're not good enough to do this, or you shouldn't be doing this because you're not worthy and everything. If you can augment that voice and make it sound like Donald Trump, it's a lot easier to tell him to fuck off.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you've got, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Donald Trump. It was the example that was used in the tweet that I read. But like it can happen if there's someone that you find easy, or you think it's easy to tell them to stop talking that way to you, and tell that person to shut up. If you can change that voice into your head into just their voice, so it sounds like them, you can tell that voice to go away a lot easier.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess that's my first piece of advice. It's like my first part of the toolkit for people with if you have these voices, or if you have this sort of a disembodied thing in your head telling you something, make that voice something that you can confront.
I would like to maybe turn it into like a Joe Pasquale voice, just for like a sort of slight comedic, slight like I actually would dislike you and tell you to fuck off
because we all know it's your own voice. You all know that when you hear that voice of any kind, whether it's go on you can do it or go on you can't do it, it's always your voice. It's never someone else's voice. So if you can just move that voice into something like Joe Pasquale or Donald Trump or Alex Jones
in a head voice kind of thing, and segue into something fairly similar, a pretty random podcast. Obviously, in terms of pop culture, X-Men and various other comics and stuff. That's why I haven't seen a single X-Men film apart from about 20 minutes of the first one, because I just don't want to read the comics in the actors' voices. Like in your brain, like if you read something way before like it comes out as a film, you've already established a headcanon for all the voices in your head. But if you happen to watch a film before you then read the comics, I don't want Professor X to have Patrick Stewart's voice forever and ever every time I read it, even though he's the perfect Professor X.
Well, the interesting thing about that though is that because I was raised on before the comics, I was raised on the 90s cartoon. They all have their voices. So the only one that is similar to the film is Kelsey Grammer. Has got the same sort of voice as the Beast cartoon, just well spoken.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird though how you kind of pick that up and then your brain kind of like just transplants it into the comics every time you read it, because in fairness, like as you're reading, you shouldn't actually be giving the reading a voice, but you do. It's part of
but sometimes I think to myself, I've realised I've just been reading this in my reading voice, so I'm actually going to try and give them a voice, and then I go like, oh no, that doesn't sound right.
I struggle really badly with like visualization, which is weird. Like because a lot of people when they read books, they're like, I imagine they look like this. I can't imagine that, which I think is a really weird like thing. I don't know.
I do. When the initial description it forms in the book, I tend to give it a go, and if it's not very good, if it tends to come out blurry, then I just leave it and just they stay blurry. If it goes quite vivid straight away, they tend to stick.
No, absolutely, I'm getting that. Like we I've got generic male character 1 in my brain, which I'll go to if it's not immediately clear. And generic male character 1 is kind of just like crew cut, short, like goatee beard, just generic male 1, just kind of looks like a jobber wrestler that come from like somewhere in South Carolina that's just been like shoehorned in. I mean that's my kind of. But then everybody else, like usually I will be able to describe it in my brain, going to that Kill Your Friends by John Niven when they did the Kill Your Friends movie. And Nicholas Hoult played Stealth Fox on that, and he was basically exactly as I thought about it in my brain.
That's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
However, the thing I was really, really annoyed with on that is that on the poster they had James Corden in massive letters, and I was really annoyed that James Corden was going to get like a starring role in this, and he was the first guy that got bumped off in the book, and I was like, well, thank God for that. Like, I wasn't trying. I could, because a lot of the side characters in my brain, I couldn't work out what they looked like. I couldn't work out who the James Corden character was going to be, and I was amazingly relieved when it was the first character to get bumped off.
That's cool. So related to something that you said earlier on, Craig, when you were talking about calling in sick to work, I think when I was looking over the reading materials for the Time to Talk Day, there was a workplace based set of materials. And you said that you printed off some stuff ready to put up at work so that people can have it on notice boards. And this is all on the website that I'll give out at the end of the podcast. I've got a story that relates to that, where I think everyone suffered with some kind of form of personal mental health issue at work at one time or another. Some they might dismiss as having a bad day, some they might actually think is worse. I had my first ever equivalent of twisting my ankle when I was working at my last job. So I'd had a personal tragedy 2 months before this day, and I went into work, and I woke up. It was my birthday, and I woke up, and everything felt left of center, and it was my first time experiencing a day as jarring as that, where things didn't really seem to be right. But I dismissed it because that's what you do with mental health. Like, again, if I got out of bed and my ankle was twisted, I'd be like, oh, this isn't right, I'm going to go to the doctors. The way I felt in my head, get on with it, have some breakfast, it'll be fine, have a coffee. So I did that, and I went to work, and things still weren't right when I got there. I was kind of blessed at the time, even though it was a new job, to have found someone that I felt comfortable to go to talk to.
Absolutely.
And so I went to her and I said, this is the situation, it's my birthday, and I think I'm about to have a panic attack, but I don't know what a panic attack is because I've never had one. But I think this is what it is. And she said, that's okay, go out the building, go for a walk, get away from everyone, go and see if you can find like a park bench or something, sit down, take as long as you need, come back. If you feel okay, brilliant, we'll go on. If you don't, you can go home. So I went for a walk. Nothing. It got worse and worse. Like it was almost as if every single step I was taking was
putting you
sinking
further and further underwater. Yeah.
And it was almost like I was sinking through the pavement. And I remember sitting on the bench, and I was sitting there. I was thinking, this isn't working. I'm going home. So I went back and I walked towards her, and she saw me, and she was like, "It's right, just go home." Like she could see that there was like something wrong on my sort of face. And I went to my desk, and on my desk was a note and chocolate brownie from my new manager, and it said, "I've heard it's your birthday. I hope you like chocolate." But it was kind of like his manly way of saying, "I know something's wrong. I hope this helps." So I picked it up, really struggled, but walked over to him and I said, "I really appreciate this, but I'm going to have to go home." He was like, "That's fine. Just, go, get your stuff, go." And I remember getting home and thinking that was one of the best things that a manager has ever done, because he knew that he, in a guy way, that making a big deal of it is worse.
Yeah.
But doing an act of kindness was probably the best thing that could have happened in that exact sort of space of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's my way of saying, if you are having a bad day, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be your top boss, but there's almost certainly going to be someone that you know in the workplace who you can speak to, that can then be your stronger voice to go and speak to the person who needs to know.
Sure. I mean, the best thing about that at the moment is a lot of people are nominating mental health first aiders across their sites, especially in the bigger sites that have got lots of people in them. Mental health first aiders. It's not. I mean, it sounds really dramatic.
It's wonderful.
But what it is just people who understand, who will take you to one side, who will speak to you, who say, who are your safe people, who are the people we can speak to. Is this going to get better? When is your health going to get worse or better? Are you going to need 20 minutes to talk? Are you going to need, someone to come and collect you from work? What are you going to need? We're the people that can help. I mean, obviously, in terms of the anecdote you just told, I've got the absolute polar opposite of that. I mean, it's obviously on my blog. I've spoken about it before in terms of speaking to your boss about mental health. My first boss in my first real full-time job. I was an estate agent. You don't have to hate me for that. But I was an estate agent. I was 19 years old, and I'd been through a breakup with my first serious girlfriend. So I was feeling that a little bit, but I was also feeling the burden of being straight into a high pressure sales environment straight away. And my boss was, I mean, if you got a piece of paper and said to someone, draw an estate agent, you would draw my ex-boss, the slick back hair and the suits and all of the stuff. And he was really like into his job. He was really into it. But me and him never really clicked, and I was struggling with a lot of my mental health outside of work. So I went to the doctor, and he said, "Well, I think you've got depression. I think you've got sort of acute depression. It's not going to go away for now." He said, "We'll put you on a course of tablets." So I was like, "Okay, well, we'll take some tablets. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it gets along." And he was like, "Well, obviously, speak to your boss, speak to your work, and just tell them, when you first start taking these tablets, you can be quite manic. You can be kind of like all or nothing, really lethargic or sort of really manic." And he said, "Just sort of have a word with him, take him to one side and have a chat." So I took him to one side and had a chat, and I said to him, "Well, I've got depression. it's a non-specified depression, but he said it's quite acute, and he's going to give me some tablets to sort of help myself get a little bit more on a chemical balance. And I looked up at him, and he was smiling at me. He had a big grin on his face, a huge, sort of massive, sort of shit-eating grin on his face. And he was like, and he started telling me about how it was going to affect my performance, how it's going to, mess with our job, and how we're a small company, and we need everybody on their top form, and I just felt like a piece of shit on the bottom of his shoe straight away.
Yeah.
I had nothing. There was. And that was the first time I'd ever opened up to anybody about what had happened. I had spoken to my parents briefly about it. My friends weren't even aware at that point. And I went in there and my hands were sweating and I was shaking. And I was just looking for some sort of validation, not like oh yeah, we're going to make special compensation for you and, and lower your targets and mess with your job stuff. I just wanted to kind of, okay, we're aware, tell us what we need to do. We won't do loads of stuff, but just tell us what we need to do. We'll be around for you. And he smiled at me, and he basically laughed in my face, and then after that, every job that I went to after that, I felt terrible about speaking to him. And I had one job where luckily the guy was my godfather's good friend, and on the first day I went in there, I didn't say anything. On the second day, I walked up to him. I said, "Look, I need 5 minutes." I went in. And told him, I said, obviously I've got depression. I'm on a long-term sertraline script. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. It doesn't seem to be getting any worse. And he literally put his arm on my shoulder and said, "Okay, thanks for telling me. Thank you very much for being straight with it." And I was like, I feel a bit of a fraud. I should have said it at the job interview. And he's like, "You didn't just say that at the job interview." I was like, "It's an ongoing thing, whatever. As long as it's not going to affect your work." I said, well, there are days where it may affect my work, but I will tell you as soon as I'm feeling ill, and we'll sort something out. And I went. Some days I went home in the morning and then came in the afternoon and worked 6 hours in a row. However I was feeling, he adapted to it as long as I was doing my work.
Yeah.
And that gave me that just incredible sense of faith again in people that actually they're not adjusting so much. They're not making huge leaps and bounds and strides in terms of what they're doing for you in the workplace, but they're doing something.
Yeah.
And that little bit of something that makes you feel so much better in yourself. It takes away that sense of trepidation when you're walking down to clock in the morning. What are people going to think of me today? It takes all of that away. You take a little bit of your job back into your hands, and also you give them exactly what they want. They want you there in healthy working order. They don't want you there at 25%. There's no need for you to be there at 25%.
Yeah.
They want you there working, and there's a lot of flexibility to be had.
Yeah.
If you speak to people.
100%. I mean, I probably had one of the greatest experiences with mental health in a workplace where I was working at Bradford's head office. Mm-hmm. And I'm mental health, a lot of it happens in your head, but for people who have panic attacks, they'll know that a lot of it also translates physically. And it was during the summer, it was really hot. I'm very triggered by sensory things, so loud places, extreme temperatures. It really sets me off.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. And I remember I had a full-blown panic attack in this office. And I remember going to the toilet and my heart was really, really slow. I started panicking and I thought something's wrong. So I went back to my desk and all of a sudden it was 0 to 100 and I felt my face felt really cold, and I felt dizzy and I was going to pass out, and I stood up, and I remember as soon as I was standing up starting to pass out, and my boss was just an angel, and she laid me down on the floor. They got the first aider. They ended up calling an ambulance, which was, for me at the time, dreadful, but everyone in that office was incredibly supportive. And the next day I was panicking because I wanted to go back to work, but I knew I couldn't. And she was like, no, you know, stay at home, like get well again. And that was the best thing ever. And it really does help in a work environment when you have that support, because like you said, there's no point in you being there if you're at 10% because you can't do anything, and they don't want to worry about you. They don't want to have to sit there and like, you know, think something's up, because people care. I think people don't understand that people care. So yeah, that, like, in terms of workplace support, incredibly important to talk to your bosses about it, colleagues about it, because like you said, 1 in 4 people have mental health issues. Someone in your workplace is going to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, I think if you're comfortable, try and get that conversation as early as possible. When you first get into your work, you don't want to give anybody any opportunity to take what you're feeling mentally with your mental health as a part of your aptitude for your work. If you tell people straight away, and you know, I'm quite a manic person. Some days I'll be in there and it's like I've got matchsticks under my eyelids trying to keep myself awake. Some days it's like I've double dropped a load of E and I'm in the middle of a beefer. I go from end to end, and you know, having somebody who understands that it's not just me coming in and being manic that day. Like it just so happens, like some days you have to give me a little bit more interaction, some days you have to give me a little bit less.
Yeah.
And it works. And you know, and the thing is, I know that I can go in, I can be productive with my work, I can get on with what I need to do. This is my career job. I've done this job that I'm doing now for 10 years. I know how to do it. My mental health shouldn't become a factor, you know. But also from another point of view, if you don't feel comfortable to speak to your immediate line manager or somebody who is your direct report at work because of your mental health, if there is an existing issue or something around that, it's really, really, really incredibly important to speak to somebody about it. Go to your HR, get it logged on your record that is what you're feeling, because at the end of the day, just because you have a clash with one personality, it's not worth risking your career for by not saying anything. One day having a problem and not coming to work for 3 or 4 days, or not being able to physically like get out of work and then struggling to phone in to tell people with your anxiety. You know, if people are aware of the surrounding situations, I mean, there's been times before where it's like, well, I feel ill. I feel physically, mentally ill. I don't feel worthy enough to get up this morning. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to phone in and take half a day's holiday, and I'm going to say the car's not started or whatever. And I shouldn't have to do that, but also it's good to have a little bit of holiday there to be a little bit flexible. And you're just like, well, then I've got an extra hour to get up, and then I'm going to go and bathe myself. I'm going to have a shower. I'm going to put on my clothes, like my best clothes, and I'm going to go to work. And sometimes going in at lunchtime for the afternoon and bossing it through the entire afternoon, absolutely smashing your day, is well worth a half day's holiday.
Definitely.
As long as it's beneficial to you for your health, for your mental health, for your well-being.
Definitely.
I think what you say there as well goes for, because a lot of people who even if they're on the cusp of having health issues, or if they're right in deep with it, sometimes struggle with social situations, and it can be a bit of a snowball effect, because you first of all can't make it to a social situation because you don't feel very well, you know, head-wise, and then you make yourself feel bad because you've not gone. Then your friends make you feel bad because you've not gone.
Yeah.
And then rinse and repeat.
It compounds itself into such a huge thing. Yeah.
And I think what you said, what we're saying about the workplace is just as important with your friends. And I think in terms of maybe events, social situations, if it's possible, if there is this pressure on you to get there for a certain time, if you can take some extra time to try and get yourself there, one, you're going to feel great once you've done it. You know, sometimes it's not going to work out and you might have to go home. You might have to call it. But like, sometimes if you can take that extra bit of time and people are aware that you need that extra time to get there, to get to the place that you're going, then everyone's going to appreciate it. appreciate it more, and you'll probably benefit from it in the long run. But the same goes for letting people know that you don't feel well. Like if you don't feel well, if you've got I'm sorry mate, I can't come out tonight, I feel sick. You'll do that. You go and say, sorry mate, I can't come out tonight, my head's fucking off tonight.
Like, I'm all to pieces. I'm Spaghetti Junction.
Yeah.
It's all the synapses are firing off, and I don't want to go there tonight.
Yeah, but that speaks for just as much as telling people. It speaks for understanding people. Like, if someone is telling you this, be cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Oh, you wetty. Why have you like pussied out again? Why do you not want to come out? Sometimes you just have to take what they say and think to themselves, okay, well, I'd do the same if I wasn't feeling good.
Yeah.
And you don't know all the extenuating circumstances around it. You don't know what the background is. And at the end of the day, if you're in a close enough circle with your friends, they should be able to reach out. And also, over a set of time, like, it doesn't have to be every 2 days, every 3 days. Like me and yourself, we see each other maybe once a month now these days, and like we used to see each other like 4 or 5 times a week. But you know that once you like fall back into that routine, your friends are there, and it's like you've not been away at all. And also, I know that I can spend any amount of time with you and tell you about anything in a non-judgmental manner, because you are a long-standing friend. And sometimes you just need to keep those people close rather than pushing them away, because sometimes you feel like they know too much about you, so it's easier for them to be at arm's distance. But those are your people.
Yeah. So I just realised that we kind of went into a real professional manner about it and left the friends thing unturned, and like you can really get some horrible pressure from people, unjustly, but they'll feel like it's justified because they don't know why. Like if someone doesn't come out and they keep not coming out, you're like, oh, you fucking flake. Or like it couldn't even be, oh well, he's got a girlfriend and then like he's not seeing us much anymore. Like, well, you need to know that for sure. Like you need to make sure that it's not like he's got a girlfriend but she's helping him through some issues.
And not only that, like you message someone and they tell you they're okay, message them again. Yeah. Message them twice. Because it's very, very easy for someone to turn around and go, yeah, I'm good. Sorry, I'll speak to you soon. I've just not been around. Yeah. And that is the standard lad Bible man expectation of a reply that you're supposed to send to a friend when you're feeling something.
Yeah. Here's a statement, or a quote for you from the Pretty Random podcast. Be a snowflake. Yeah. If you need to be a snowflake, be a fucking snowflake. And if someone tells you you're a snowflake, fucking sparkle. Sparkle like one, and be the unique individual person.
I saw a meme, and it was. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase it, but basically, if being a snowflake means that you're being like passionate towards people, being compassionate, feeling empathy towards people, feeling like everybody should be equal, feeling like no one should be persecuted. If you feel like being a snowflake is somebody who is like prepared to talk about their feelings, is prepared to put their heart on their sleeve, then you should know that winter is coming.
Yeah. I mean, this society is just, and the minute, like, especially with this whole snowflake thing, like, don't have feelings, don't be sensitive. Like, no, I'm a human being. Like, absolutely. I'm gonna have feelings, and I'm gonna express those feelings about things, and that, don't be ashamed about that. Don't be ashamed about having feelings and sensitivities, because
but it's easy for these hyper masculine people to just keep going on about how you shouldn't say anything, you shouldn't do that, you just you shouldn't show any element of vulnerability. But the problem is they're the same people that think that women shouldn't do that either. They're just the same people that think that no one should show any level of vulnerability, and they live their entire life bottled up feelings, and then they glass a bloke in a pub and go to prison for 20 years.
I think I try not to trivialize it too much, but I remember a joke I always heard. There's two types of guys in this world. There's people who admit they wank, and there's liars.
Absolutely.
And like in this case, it's like there's two types of people in this world. There's people who have feelings. People who admit they have feelings and problems, and liars. Well, not liars, but like people
who repress that.
Yeah,
they don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, because and like I was trying to phrase it in my mind. There's a snowflake, and there's like the other version of the snowflake who pretends like every person who's expressing their masculinity. There's nothing wrong with expressing masculinity in the same way there's nothing wrong with expressing femininity
and vulnerability.
But don't suppress someone else's desire to do the same or the opposite, like in any way. Don't suppress, like express, don't suppress.
Yeah.
Fucking write it down,
It's
people.
like if you see a dude crying in a public place, it's like, this is not the time for everyone to gather around and take photos and point at someone. Like if this hyper masculinity over all of these years has pressed down on someone and they are still prepared enough to cry when there are other people around, there is something wrong with them. They're not mentally healthy. Like you shouldn't judge them for that. You shouldn't point and go, look at that dude crying over there. It's like, what has happened? What's the story of that dude over there that's meant that he's got to cry there? Because at the end of the day, regardless of all of this, like, oh, let's all be sensitive, in a guy's mind there's still like, I shouldn't cry in public, I shouldn't cry here, I shouldn't do that. And if somebody has still had a situation that's so bad that they have to break down like that in public, you need to be talking to those guys. You don't need to be judging those guys. You need to be filming them and videoing them on your camera. You need to be engaging with those people.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I don't know how people can't, like, this whole like toxic masculinity thing of like not expressing your emotions. Like, it's, to me, it's like not even like toxic masculinity. It's a fear of femininity. It's a fear of emotion, and most basically it's a fear of humanity. Like, I cry all the time, and that makes me feel 10 times better. And people were always like, my mum especially, she was sort of like a strong Scottish woman, like, you don't cry so much. But I'm not ashamed of that. Like, it feels good after I cry. It feels fucking fantastic.
100%. I mean, if I kept a cry diary, I'd bankrupt myself on paper.
Yeah, like
100%. Like,
and I think I feel relieved when I see people, like, especially like growing up when like I didn't see my parents cry a lot. So when I did see my parents cry, for me that was confirmation that it was okay to be like that. And that also that, they're not bottling things up, because that's, when someone starts crying, that's really a release. And that's a good thing to see. That's a good symptom.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously, like, corny metaphor alert, but crying is like a pressure valve for the soul. It just something about it just takes that pressure off, the same way that punching a door frame does, the same way that all of those other like unhealthy ways of coping. I mean, I've self-harmed. I will admit I've self-harmed. I would never. I've worked my way out of it. I've tattooed over all my scars, and I would never do it again, because I have found other coping mechanisms. Not to say that the other coping mechanisms are healthy, but I self-harmed pretty badly when I was about 17, 18 years old, and my dad caught me and he opened the door and I was trying to wedge the door closed, and I'd made a horrible mess of my arms, and I still had the knife in my hand, and the safest thing for Dad to do was open the door, and he just punched me straight in the side of the head and knocked me out. And then it brought me around, and I came around in the car on the way to hospital. He said, "You had a knife in your hand. There was nothing I could do, and you needed to stop." And from that, like, the abject kind of shame and the abject kind of like just embarrassment and the heightened tension that was around with my dad that night, I never did anything like that again in terms of self-harm. Obviously, destructive tendencies in terms of what you take and drink and do everything like that. That's another thing altogether. But I never self-harmed again after that night, and I think it was just seeing the terror in my dad's eyes. That his only son, the only son my mum could have, like, I was sat there with that happening, like, and I think, in fairness, everyone's like, "Oh, he punched you in the head," and I was like, that's the best thing he could have done to me that night.
Yeah,
because there was no rationalising with me then.
No.
But now, as you get older and you realise that those releases are available in other things. Just go and, like, I know it sounds really boring. I go and play golf, you know, or I'll draw, I'll write, I'll do whatever. And those valves that used to be physical pressure release valves just come from other things.
Yeah.
You still need to have that release. The catharsis still needs to be there, but you just need to move it into things that are slightly more healthy, and things that are going to, you know, benefit you. Things that are going to increase your life. Like I write lots. Obviously, I've got a blog. I don't write as much on it as I should, but I write now, and when I write, getting that onto the paper is so much better getting ink on paper than it would be from doing other things, you know, hurting yourself things.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's better getting ink on paper than blood on paper.
Yeah, and I think there's like, people really struggle because there is, you know, it's like nowadays, especially with like cognitive behavioral therapy, they really encourage people to have those, like you said, those valves to release the pressure through creativity. I think a lot of people sort of trip at the first hurdle because they think, like, especially for me, it was like they were like, keep a diary, and I was like, well, I'm not really good at keeping a diary. So for me, like, you know, really, it's not about, there's no one way to release those pressures. I think that's what people have to understand. There's not one way. You don't have to just keep a journal. Like, if you like going horse riding, go horse riding. If you like painting, paint. Everyone has a hobby. Just throw yourself into that hobby as a way to release yourself. It doesn't just have to be journaling. It doesn't, like, they try and give you examples, but I think people think there is one prescribed way to get yourself out of those situations, and there's not. Like, you know, you have a blog, and you know, some people draw and are artsy, and some people like playing sports, and some people like playing games and stuff like that. So
the thing is, you don't have to be pro at it, though. You don't have to be professional at it.
No,
it doesn't matter your aptitude, your skill level towards it. It's that you try. It's not what you create. It's that you create. You know, it's just making an effort, just getting it out there. And at the end of the day, like, the first few things, the first few attempts at anything that you do, you know, whether you're trying to return a serve on tennis, whether you're trying to draw something, whether you're writing something, the first few times, your biggest critic is going to be you. It's always going to be you. Like, the hardest possible thing that I did was push in, post and publish on that first blog that I did. And even though I knew it was for me, it wasn't for anybody else. But putting it out there for people to critique it, for people to talk about it, judge it. I mean, if you're already feeling like a little bit sensitive, that's the hardest thing. But by doing that, people don't ever come back and go, do you know what, that was rubbish, it was awful.
No.
You know, your writing was crap, like the way that you like laid out your paragraphs was crap. What they do is they say, oh, you know, you've done okay there, I want to see your next thing.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, and by giving you that, I don't know, what's the best thing to say? I mean, by giving you that avenue to go down something where all of a sudden you've put your head above the parapet, you put yourself out there, and you're not getting hammered for it, you're not getting pelted for it.
Yeah, you're being invited.
You're doing something that's creative.
Yeah.
And it's not coming back, it's not blowing up in your face.
Yeah.
You know, that's a huge release for me. I post a load of things. I write, majority of my work that I write in one hit. I go back through and read it, but very, very rarely will do anything with it in terms of editing it. It's because it was right the first time. If I wrote it, it was right the first time.
Yeah, you're not writing a perfect thing.
Yeah, I'm not here to write a Guardian column. I'm here to write what I think, and I've written that. And if I go back and edit it feels like I falsified it because there was a reason I wrote it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I just get it all down, and then afterwards, that is the same level of catharsis that I used to feel if I used to get myself hammered on whiskey and cut my arms and legs and do whatever my younger me coping mechanisms were. It's out there now, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely as well, like, I think a sense of accomplishment as well, because I think a big thing for mental health and people who suffer with mental health is they feel like they can't do anything right, they can't do anything, they're not worthy. And to have like an outlet where you can create something and bring something into the world where that you can physically see is a huge sense of accomplishment there, and a huge sense of, like, you know, like, you can do this. You know, you're here for a reason. You can do this.
And every single one of those different talents that you pick up, when you're at your worst, when you're at your absolute lowest, I've always found the things that I'm really good at are things that I find when I've got at my lowest point, like astronomy, you know, like writing, like all of the things that I really enjoyed, you know. Like when I had a really bad breakup, I bought myself a telescope, I bought tons of books, you know. I go out and do that like all of the things that I've found that have really pulled me out of the ditch, all the things that are really, really beneficial, and like the top 5 things that I would list in my life now are things that have come along as a result of being at my lowest point. So I know it feels like it's going to be bad. I know it feels like it's going to keep going on forever, and I know you feel like everything is the worst it could possibly be. But find a thing you love. Reach out to your friends, your family, the people that are around you, and just come back into the fold. Like, come back into the life. Like, the life is good. Life is really good when you build a safety net, when you build a support system around you. Come back into the fold, and everything will be good.
Cool. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up. Thank you both for both being on and sharing. Just want to do a couple shout outs. No, I want to do one shout out and then a couple mentions, I guess. So the shout out is to Rosie, long-term friend of the podcast, ex-colleague of all of us, apart from you.
Well, yeah, could have been.
Yeah.
Could have been colleague.
All worked in the same place at one point.
I've not seen Rosie for ages.
Oh, I love Rosie.
Rosie has an Etsy store called Pom Pom Paints. You can find her on Instagram at Pom Pom Paints, all one word. And you can search. Well, if you go to the Instagram, you'll find all the links that you need from there. She does some fantastic stuff around mental health, including pin badges, mugs, and bespoke artwork.
Beautiful artwork.
And she's run a couple Kickstarters, and one that's actually in progress at the moment. Again, you can find the link on her Instagram, which we funded the last one, and it was a badge that said self-care isn't selfish,
with a little cat on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool.
So it's that kind of thing, and I think that's the kind of message that we're trying to espouse through this
absolutely.
podcast.
Yeah.
So.
And she's also a counsellor now as well. She has an Instagram page called Rosie the Counsellor.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
So
she was always a caring person.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we need compassionate people and jobs like that.
Yeah, and everybody should definitely champion those sorts of things.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, that's the best place to be.
And one of the fantastic things about her Instagram is that she is not backwards and coming forwards about telling people she's having a bad day. But I think it's, for her, is a great outlet. A lot of people try to stay away from social media because it doesn't do them any good. But I think for Rosie, it's a good outlet for saying to the world, I'm not okay today.
I'm not okay today. Yeah, absolutely. It's okay to do that. I mean, it's 100% to do that. And if that's your resource, and that's your little vent, if that's popping the cap off of it, then absolutely go for it. Do whatever works for you. And
then obviously just your normal. If you're going through troubles, if you need someone to talk to, you've got Samaritans. I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. I'm not going to give you all the numbers and everything. You can search Google Samaritans. You've got
Calm Zone, obviously Calm Zone. You've got plenty of other resources. To write Love on Her Arms in America. You've got various other different things. Just get there.
I also want to mention the app. The mindfulness app.
Headspace.
Headspace
is
which
incredible.
It's gaining a lot of more traction at the minute. I see it a lot in like my YouTube adverts and stuff like that. And whenever the adverts play, they're actually really good, because it's not just an advert. It's like, oh, now we're going to do this breathing exercise, and that's really nice when you're in like an environment on like the internet to have that little like short break. But definitely, like I need to do that more, and mindfulness is a new and upcoming thing in mental health.
Definitely.
It's just a form of meditation. So many communities have known for thousands of years that meditation is
from a personal point of view, I use Headspace, and it's great. I mean, the free version is incredible as well, because you don't have to pay anything to them. Obviously, the developers are great, and they have thousands of resources available on there. But just even if you just do the daily one, just on the app. Put your headphones in for 2 or 3 minutes every single day. You can do it in the office. You can do it in the work toilet. You can do it wherever you need to do it. Just get your headphones in. Just have a couple of minutes to yourself, and just like listen to your breath. Listen to everything. Listen to your heartbeat, because I know it sounds really, really hippie eyes and everything, but it works so much just to take those couple of minutes away from yourself. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Headspace, great tool. I'll recommend it.
And also just to kind of prove we're not sponsored by Headspace, because it does sound a little bit like it.
Yeah,
No,
no.
I'm on the free version.
I
If we were sponsored, I'd have it for nothing.
I wish we were sponsored by Headspace, because I'm sure they've got some good
Also-
packages. But no, just to prove we're not.
Yeah.
The basis of a Headspace, and this is so that you could even whilst listening to this right now, you could practice the art of mindfulness, which is just simply bringing yourself to right now and realizing, let's say you're having a panic attack about an upcoming job interview. That's not happening right now. What's happening right now is you're sat in a chair listening to a podcast that you are hopefully enjoying, and everything's fine. So this is where you need to be right now and all the time. So when things are going wrong in your head, whether it's about something that's happened or something that's going to happen, unless you're actually plummeting to the ground in a plane, in which case, fair play, probably don't practice mindfulness at that point. It's not a good place to be. You might as well just panic. You haven't got much time left. Things are fine right now, and most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, things are fine right now.
Yeah.
And for people who maybe listen to this and thinking it's all a bunch of hippie mumbo jumbo, if you've ever seen Die Hard, and John McClane's on the plane and he's having a bit of a tough time, and somebody next to him says to him, if you take off your shoes and scrunch your feet on the carpet, you'll feel better. Now, what John McClane, macho man John McClane, doesn't realise is he was practicing mindfulness, because he's centering himself and he's feeling the ground beneath his feet.
And also, I actually do that like in my everyday, but just on the inside of my shoes. Like, and I do it in bed a lot as well. Just like scrunching curling my toes up, like against a surface. It just feels so grounding.
It's just about making sure that you know that your body is doing what it's doing right there and then.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna say, like, if you can just plant yourself and just realise what's going on around you, and sometimes feeling so insignificant in the grand scheme of things takes away the heaviness of all of your problems. Just takes it off. At the end of the day, it's like, you think to yourself, how many people there are around the world. You look at your problems, you look at everybody's problems. It's like, we have a lot of problems as humanity. We need to start worrying about them, not about all our own little stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But if as long as everybody looks to the next person and makes sure that next person's okay, and we keep doing that all around the world, everyone's going to be all right.
Definitely.
So just to sign off, I've been Mark, you've been Holly, and you've been Craig. Craig number 2.
Hairboy, Craig 2.
Thank you everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure to do this episode. I'm going to leave you with a quote from the great Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius. Waste no time arguing what a good man should be one. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. If it's not right, do not do it. If it's not true, do not say it. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.